Hi, everyone. Happy Mindset Monday. My name is Katrina Potter, and today we're going to talk about communication and emotional development with children. This is a subject that I really enjoy talking about. For those of you that haven't heard my background and my story, I am a speech language pathologist. And formerly, my specialty focus area was feeding development, and I also worked in the pediatric population. So working with children very much is in my wheelhouse, and then adding in the holistic life coach and working on emotional release work, and then also being an emotion code practitioner. All of those worlds kind of come together when it comes to talking about children and emotional and communication development. They're all areas of passion of mine, and I think the more that we can understand ways that we can communicate to support children, the easier it all can become for everyone involved. And so I'm excited to share some things that I have learned along the way. And my intention is that these are tools that we can all add in and take our communication and emotional development and just take it to the next level. I also want to preface it with, I think it's a constant learning, and I don't know as there is a perfect model. I know for myself, I'm still mindful and aware, and there are times when I implement it and there's times when I'm not. So I think that it is something to bring on our awareness and then give ourselves some compassion for when we forget to implement them. So grace and compassion going, and also want to share these because I think they are things that can make all of our lives easier. So the first thing before we really dive in is understanding that in different ages, children are developing different things emotionally. So we go from feelings, just how we feel in our body, in that 0 to 3 age bracket. Then there's magical thinking and right and wrong. Actually, right and wrong comes first. What they're understanding what's right, what's wrong. Then magical thinking and how, like, the identity within the family system and within the social systems and how to be in society, all of that kind of developing later in the teen years. So our support and our communication can be extremely helpful in those times, and navigating that learning and that emotional development. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is clean communication and how helpful that can be. So, clean communication, what do I mean by that? Clean communication is open responses and or open-ended communication. So, if I say, let me think of an example. If I say, "You're not going to do that, are you?" That's not clean communication. You know from my communication style that I am not okay with that, right? Versus if I say, um, how are you going to respond to that? Very clean communication. You can't tell my emotional state based on my communication. Now, what does that allow? That allows the child or any communication partner that we're talking to be able to openly communicate with us in a way where we don't already have our emotional state like sprinkled into it. So trying to ask open-ended questions that are neutral. Now, what is the other benefit with asking open-ended questions? Well, it brings out more communication, which is a deeper level of connection. So if I say something like, do you want milk? That is a yes or a no response. Versus if I say, what would you like to drink? There's a chance for, so that's, I mean, obviously that's a very rudimentary example, but you get what I'm saying as far as, do you want this? Is a yes or no response. Do you want, what do you want to drink? Open-ended. But we do that sometimes with, did you have a good day at school? That's a yes, no. Versus, tell me about something that happened at school today. open-ended, you're getting more of a response. Now, the other thing, with did you have a good day at school? It's not emotionally, or it's not neutral, right? That's implying we only want you to have good days at school. Well, some days there's not. So we want to ask, tell me about something that happened at school today. So now they're feeling open to be able to talk to us about maybe some not so great experiences or some great experiences that they had for the day. For that. Also asking questions. So then the next thing is asking questions to deepen our understanding. What was that like for you? Versus, oh, that sounds awful. Well, maybe it wasn't awful. Maybe it was really sad, or, whatever the case may be. So when we ask, and again, this goes with any communication partner that we're talking to, what was that like for you? Gives a chance to explain and deepen the connection and the trust in that communication turn. So that's the next one. Now, children are able to inherit emotions. And so the more that we can keep things neutral, the more that they are able to develop their own perception of reality and understand their emotions even more. So if we say, what was that like for you? It's a chance for them to mature that emotional response, I guess. With that, there is also a really great resource. Her name is Janet Lansbury, and she has a couple books that were shared with me from a friend. And she goes into communicating in a way that is clean without shame. Shame is a learned emotion, as is guilt, and neither of those are emotions that a baby is born with. They're things that we can communicate, or we communicate to our children, or children that we're around. So she talks about how to communicate without infusing that shame and guilt in it. And I just think it's a really great resource because I think it's helpful to have examples. So that's another thing that I wanted to share within there. Now, what else do we want to go over today? Emotional responses. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is our emotional responses. So when a child is upset, what stories do we add onto that? If a child is hitting, let's say, are we cautious of how we're identifying the child? Because our perception of ourself is very much determined by how others are talking about us when we're in that moldable child stage. So if a child is consistently hearing that they're naughty, they're taking on the identity that they're naughty, versus, okay, they hit someone, okay, we can model that very different. It could be my child is naughty, or, oh, I need to go over and teach them how to communicate differently when they're frustrated or when they're having some sort of an experience. So without the label of my child is naughty, they're able to create a different identity. So what we communicate to our child very much matters as far as that identity development. So just kind of being aware of, okay, so there is a lot of frustration coming out right now. Well, what's really happening here? They're not able to communicate. They're not feeling loved. They're not feeling how can I go over and pay attention to what is happening and provide some additional support in that. So just our labels that we use in general and the stories that we create around things. I know for myself, I've even seen this, is some characteristics that I have about myself that I maybe don't love as deep as I could. When I see them on my children, that becomes a little triggering because we don't love it yet in ourselves. So how can we love it in someone else, right? So it's we hold judgment on that characteristic about ourselves. So a lot of times when communicating with children, it's really about communicating with ourselves. And we see something that triggers us in our kids. Oh, dang. Okay, I guess it's time for me to work on this so that I'm not triggered and showing up in this communication style with that trigger. And then the story can be released, right? Like if I have judgment that I'm being a bitch, I use this example a lot. That's a really harsh term that we use in our society. And many of us want to avoid being a bitch, right? So if I have a lot of judgment on that, and then I see my child acting in a way that kind of aligns with that label, I'm going to be super triggered. Versus if I love the word bitch and can acknowledge that there's times mess with my kids, you'll see my bitch come out. She's there, right? We all have that part. But if we can show up in a place of love and compassion for that characteristic, then it's not going to be so triggering. And we can show up and teach our child how to navigate the bitchy parts versus shutting it down altogether. And then maybe there's no boundaries that the child is developing because of that. So hopefully that makes sense. But whatever we're being triggered by within ourselves shows up in our child, and then we communicate in that way and create these stories. So we want to be cautious of the stories that we are sharing around our children, as that's creating their perception of their own identity. So what other things? I think that is it for today. On Wednesday, I'm going to talk about more physical things that we can do to support our children. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to share is talking about emotions and how we can do that. So just giving sometimes the acknowledgement, oh, that sounds like you're really upset. How are you feeling? Versus you're fine, right? We shut down that emotional development when we say that. Think about when a baby is born and it cries. The first thing that we say is, shh, 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 you're fine. And we're already disconnecting the child from their emotional response. It's like the child thinks that they're hungry. And then we say, no, you're fine. What a confusing thing as a little baby. But we often do that in general, just with our communication style. And one thing that can really deepen the connection with our children is when we acknowledge that there is an emotion. It doesn't mean that we need to stay and dwell on it, but it can be, oh, that sounds like it really hurt, or that sounds like you're really upset, whatever the case may be. Like acknowledging that. It feels good to be acknowledged as an adult. If you come to me and have an event that happened and I just pretend like nothing happened, that hurts. But if I were to say, ah, that sounds like that really sucked, you're like, yes, it did. Thank you for acknowledging that. So we can do that with children as well. And it gives them a sense of trust and safety in their communication with us. So I did want to share that. And the thing that I like to add in with that is we can also pair in oils. Do you want to go grab an oil that'll help with that? Or is there an oil that you would want to use right now? Or feeling really nervous? Okay, do you want to go grab some oils that'll help your body to feel more calm? So just kind of having that as an additional tool, I think is great. Or maybe you're not into oils. Maybe you just, I don't know, want to do something else. Or you could do like deep breathing exercises or something to pair in as well. So just kind of using that emotional experience to be a place of connecting deeper rather than disconnecting, I think is what I'm trying to share in that. So yes, I think that is all that I wanted to share today. I kind of jumped around and went on tangents, but I think I shared everything that I was hoping to share. So that is it for today. I will see you on Wednesday. Have a great day, everyone.